"Monster! Get your hideous face away from us." The shrill cry of the village elder's wife, a woman whose face was usually etched with a semblance of kindness, pierced the humid air like a poisoned dart. Kamau flinched, his already hunched shoulders drawing inward as if to shield his very soul. The small, roughly constructed box he carried, his constant companion and only refuge, trembled in his grasp. The circle of villagers surrounding him, their faces contorted in a grotesque mask of fear and revulsion, pressed closer. Their whispers, which usually slithered like unseen snakes, now hissed with open hostility. He could feel their collective gaze, heavy and accusatory, burning into the thin cardboard that separated him from their condemning stares. This was his daily crucifixion in Ithaca, the village of his birth, the land of his ancestors, a place that had become a living hell. Kamau's arrival into the world had been met with the joyous ululations that traditionally greeted new life in Ithaca. His mother, Zawadi, her eyes sparkling with a love as deep as the ancient wellspring, had held him close. His father, Jabari, his voice a comforting rumble like distant thunder, had beamed with pride. But the capricious hand of fate, or something far more malevolent as the years would reveal, had dealt a cruel blow. In Kamau's infancy, a shadow had fallen upon Ithaca, a swift and merciless sickness that swept through the community like a dry season wildfire. Many succumbed to its deadly embrace, leaving behind a village scarred by loss. For Kamau, the scar was a visible one, etched onto his delicate face by the cruel hand of the illness. The smooth skin of infancy had been replaced by a twisted tapestry of scars, a roadmap of suffering that the villagers, steeped in their ancient superstitions and easily swayed by the fear of the unknown, misread as a divine curse, a visible manifestation of evil. The initial whispers were like the rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, barely audible, easily dismissed. But they grew, fueled by the potent cocktail of ignorance and fear, morphing into a relentless chorus of condemnation. The village elders, their faces bearing the weight of generations of tradition and prejudice, spoke in hushed tones of angry spirits, of ancestral displeasure at some unseen transgression. Zawadi and Jabari, their love a fierce and unwavering shield, fought tirelessly to protect their son from the rising tide of hostility. Yet even their combined strength couldn't entirely stem the fear that had taken root in the hearts of their neighbors, the almost imperceptible recoil, the averted gaze that accompanied Kamau's every appearance. The ceremony meant to celebrate Kamau's naming, a sacred ritual intended to welcome him into the embrace of Ithaca, became a scene of profound and lasting trauma. As Zawadi, her hands trembling slightly, gently pulled back the soft cloth that veiled her son's face, a collective gasp rippled through the assembled villagers, a wave of horrified surprise. A piercing shriek tore through the stunned silence. A child's terrified wail echoed the primal fear that gripped the adults, and the radiant pride that had illuminated Jabari's face crumbled, replaced by a desolate landscape of despair and a burning, impotent rage. The hushed whispers hardened into open pronouncements. Kamau was Mizamo, a child touched by malevolent spirits, cursed from birth. He was an abomination, a living embodiment of misfortune, a stain upon the collective honor of Ithaca. He was to be shunned, isolated, cast out from the warmth of human connection lest his perceived affliction spread like the very disease that had marked him. Jabari, his voice thick with a potent brew of grief and fury, dared to defy the pronouncements of the elders, his words a raw and desperate cry of paternal love. He would not abandon his son to the cold embrace of their fear. But even his impassioned pleas, his unwavering stance, couldn't fully erase the ingrained terror in the eyes of his neighbors, the subtle flinch, the involuntary step backward that punctuated Kamau's every painful interaction. The box appeared months later, a desperate act of maternal love and a silent acknowledgement of Kamau's growing awareness of his isolation. It was a crude and simple thing, salvaged from discarded packaging, rough cardboard held together with frayed twine. Yet, this humble object became Kamau's sanctuary, his self-imposed prison, his only fragile shield against a world that recoiled from his very existence. Behind its rough, brown walls, he could find fleeting moments of respite from the relentless stares, the venomous whispers, the overt cruelty that had become the soundtrack of his young life. He could, in those brief moments of solitude, allow himself to dream of a world where he was simply Kamau, a boy like any other, deserving of kindness and acceptance. The daily journey to the village school was a torturous pilgrimage. Each step was heavy with the weight of anticipation, each breath laced with the bitter taste of dread. He walked with his head bowed low, the box a tangible burden, its physical weight a mere echo of the immense emotional weight he carried within his small chest. The other children, their innocent hearts poisoned by the fear and prejudice they absorbed from the adults, were relentless in their torment. Stones, thrown with the casual cruelty of youth, often struck their intended target. Cruel rhymes, learned and repeated with chilling accuracy, echoed in the dry air, each syllable a fresh, stinging wound upon his already fragile spirit. The teachers, bound by the unyielding traditions of Ithaca, offered no intervention, their silence a tacit endorsement of his suffering, their averted gazes a mirror of the village's collective rejection. Then a subtle shift began to ripple through the stagnant waters of Ithaca's deeply ingrained prejudice. A new teacher arrived in the village, a woman named Aisha. She came from a distant, bustling city, a place where the vibrant tapestry of life was woven with threads of diverse cultures and perspectives, a place where difference was not automatically equated with danger. Aisha's eyes, unclouded by the ingrained fears of Ithaca, saw beyond the scarred surface of Kamau's face. She saw the bright flicker of intelligence in his hidden eyes, the profound loneliness that clung to him like a second skin, the desperate, unspoken yearning for connection that flickered like a fragile flame behind the cardboard mask. Aisha's presence in Ithaca was like a crack appearing in a seemingly impenetrable wall of fear. She challenged the elders not with anger or disrespect, but with the quiet strength of reason and the unwavering power of empathy. She spoke of the shared humanity that lay beneath outward appearances, of the corrosive nature of fear, of the paramount importance of understanding over blind judgment. She shared captivating stories with the children, tales of courageous heroes bearing visible scars, of unexpected beauty found in unconventional forms, of the inner strength that often bloomed from the soil of resilience. Slowly, tentatively, a few young hearts, less hardened by the ingrained prejudices of their elders, began to open to her gentle wisdom. However, the ancient ways held a tenacious grip on the heart of Ithaca. The fear of Kamau was deeply rooted, a seed planted and nurtured by generations of unwavering belief. Aisha's compassionate efforts, though yielding small buds of understanding, were met with suspicion and resistance from many of the adults. Some whispered that she was a disruptive outsider, a harbinger of unwelcome change attempting to dismantle the sacred traditions of Ithaca. The elders, their authority subtly questioned by her progressive ideas, harbored a growing resentment towards the newcomer and her unsettling influence. One sweltering evening, as the dry heat clung to the village like a suffocating blanket, disaster struck Ithaca. A fire, ignited by a carelessly tended cooking fire and fanned by the relentless harmattan winds, erupted in the heart of the village. The dry, thatched roofs of the huts ignited with terrifying speed, the flames leaping from one dwelling to another, consuming homes and threatening to engulf the entire community. Panic seized Ithaca. People screamed in terror, their voices lost in the deafening roar of the inferno, as they scrambled blindly through the smoke-filled pathways. In the ensuing chaos, a small child no older than 3, became trapped inside a burning hut, her terrified cries a heartbreaking counterpoint to the crackling flames. Fear, a primal and paralyzing force, gripped the villagers. The flames were too intense, the risk of entering the inferno too great. They stood frozen, their faces illuminated by the flickering light, watching in helpless horror as the small, desperate voice grew weaker with each passing moment. But then, a figure emerged from the swirling smoke and leaping flames, a figure instantly recognizable by the crude box perched precariously atop his head. It was Kamau. Without a flicker of hesitation, without a single thought for his own safety, he plunged headfirst into the heart of the inferno, his small form swallowed by the choking smoke and angry flames. Time seemed to stretch into an agonizing eternity. The villagers watched, their hearts pounding with a terrifying mixture of fear for Kamau's safety and a dawning, unfamiliar emotion, hope. Then, through the dense, acrid smoke, a figure reappeared, silhouetted against the raging fire. It was Kamau, the small, limp form of the trapped child cradled protectively in his arms. He stumbled out of the inferno, his clothes smoldering, his beloved box blackened and charred beyond recognition, but the child in his arms was miraculously unharmed, her cries now weak but alive. In that single breathtaking moment of selfless bravery, the perception of Kamau in the eyes of Ithaca underwent a profound and irreversible transformation. The villagers no longer saw him as a cursed outcast, a harbinger of misfortune. They witnessed, with their own eyes, the extraordinary courage that had been hidden for so long behind the cardboard mask, the profound compassion that had been obscured by their own deep-seated fear. The elders, their authority humbled by his undeniable heroism and the undeniable truth of his character, finally acknowledged the devastating error of their judgment. That night, the charred remnants of the box were discarded, no longer a symbol of shame but a testament to a past that was beginning to recede. Kamau stood before the assembled villagers, his scarred face finally unveiled to their unburdened gaze. He was still Kamau, the boy marked by the sickness, but he was also Kamau, the brave, the selfless, the savior of a child, the unexpected hero of Ithaca. Life in Ithaca didn't undergo a magical, instantaneous metamorphosis. The scars on Kamau's face remained, a permanent reminder of the suffering he had endured. But the venomous whispers that had haunted his every waking moment gradually faded, replaced by murmurs of respect, of admiration. The children who had once tormented him now approached him with shy smiles and hesitant curiosity. And Kamau, for the first time in his young life, felt truly seen, not as a monstrous aberration, but as an integral and valued member of his community, a human being deserving of dignity, respect, and belonging. Years unfolded, and Kamau blossomed into a thoughtful and respected young man. The scars that once marked him as an outcast now served as a poignant reminder of his extraordinary courage and his inherent goodness. One sweltering afternoon, while assisting his aging father in clearing out a dilapidated storage hut, Kamau's hand brushed against a small leather-bound pouch hidden beneath a pile of forgotten tools. Inside, nestled amongst dried herbs and cracked pottery shards, he discovered a collection of letters, their paper brittle with age and tied together with a length of faded, hand-spun twine. The ink on the fragile pages had faded, but the words they contained struck Kamau like a physical blow, revealing a shocking and long-buried truth. The devastating sickness that had swept through Ithaca during his infancy, the very illness that had left him with the scars that had defined his young life, hadn't been a random act of fate, a capricious cruelty of the spirits. It had been a deliberately orchestrated act of malice, a calculated attack perpetrated by a bitter and envious rival of his father, a man consumed by jealousy and a ruthless ambition for Jabari's influential position within the village hierarchy. The letters, penned in the unmistakable hand of the long-deceased rival, detailed his insidious plan, his clandestine acquisition of the deadly disease, and his calculated contamination of the village's primary water source. The scars on Kamau's face, the source of his years of profound torment and isolation, weren't the mark of a divine curse at all, but the visible consequence of a deliberate and heinous crime, a targeted act of cruelty intended to weaken his father by afflicting his infant son. This devastating revelation, a dark secret unearthed from the depths of the past, cast a chilling light on the intensity of the village's initial fear and the unwavering conviction of their prejudice. They had unknowingly lived for years under the shadow of a deliberate act of betrayal, tragically misinterpreting a human act of malice as divine retribution, their fear and ostracization of Kamau a heartbreaking consequence of a long-hidden crime. Kamau's arduous journey, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of profound betrayal, relentless rejection, crushing abandonment, and public humiliation, ultimately illuminates the timeless truth that true beauty lies not in the fleeting perfection of outward appearance, but in the enduring resilience of the human heart and the immeasurable depth of one's character. His story serves as a potent and enduring reminder that fear can warp our perceptions, leading to judgments rooted in ignorance and prejudice, inflicting emotional wounds that far surpass any physical scar. It underscores the critical importance of cultivating empathy and looking beyond superficial exteriors to recognize the inherent worth and untapped potential that resides within every single individual, regardless of their outward presentation. Furthermore, Kamau's life stands as a powerful testament to the transformative power of courage and compassion, demonstrating that even in the darkest depths of adversity and societal rejection, these vital human qualities can emerge as potent forces for positive change, capable of bridging seemingly insurmountable divides and fostering profound understanding within a community. Ultimately, his narrative offers an enduring message of hope and the possibility of redemption, illustrating that healing and forgiveness are always within reach, both for the individual who has suffered unimaginable hardship and for the community that has unknowingly perpetuated injustice, and that true and lasting strength lies not in concealing our vulnerabilities, but in embracing our shared humanity with open and courageous hearts.